the last two sessions, I've focused very much on healthy principles around food and eating. Today we'll do a little bit of that, but my focus is more on the emotional and mental aspects of health and wellness, and particularly reducing anxiety and stress and elevating one's mood and state. So the overview for today, in the next 30 minutes, I'll just do a quick recap on the continuum concept. We'll mention a few more examples. I'll talk about primary nutrition and no, it's not food. And then we'll look at practical techniques to remove fear, and then finally potent plant support, psychological support. So if you consider last week and the week before, I spoke about my concept of health as a continuum concept expression, where we've had bodies for a very long time in this place, at least our ancestors, for thousands, hundreds of millions of years even. And our bodies are used to expecting a certain feedback from our environment. And over the last 100 years especially, and even more so 50 years, that's changed radically. There are a lot of new inputs that we've never been exposed to before. So if you want to look at what is healthy or not in a simplistic way, you can just consider what has changed in the last 50 years, particularly big things. So some of the things I see today on the level of mental and emotional health and wellness, social isolation is apparently an epidemic. It's one of the biggest epidemics on the planet currently. What do you mean? I thought this was only an epidemic of the current epidemic of being forced to stay indoors and isolate yourself. No, apparently even before this forced isolation started, the destruction of communities and families was causing many, many people to live in isolation. I'm busy writing a blog article for our website, and I found some staggering statistics on this. I'll read you the one. Loneliness and isolation, social isolation, have the same cardiovascular effect as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. But these factors also increase the risk of all-cause morbidity. In other words, dying from any cause. Loneliness increases the risk of developing dementia by 50% and stroke by 32%, while increasing the morbidity risk of cancer by 25%. And these are huge numbers. To me, like epidemic or no epidemic, forcing people to stay in house is going to cause way more people to die. So I'm all for solutions to problems in the world. But what doesn't make sense to me is when the solutions themselves are going to kill more people. That doesn't seem right to me. And there are 13 different studies that I found that reference this. Or that have done their own work on showing this exact thing. And now we're not talking about like just people losing their jobs and the depression that comes from that. I mean, this is just isolation. Let me pause on that rant. So the other thing that's broken in our continuum is the disconnection from nature. Nature deficit disorder is a thing, and it's increasing every single year. Living indoors, living in boxes, in cars, in offices, staring at boxes all day long, it's being in the box. The longer you keep yourself in the box and you don't get outside into nature, the more disconnected your body is from its continuum, which it evolved in harmony with nature. And then obviously the result of this, which is a broken continuum, is that many, 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 many people are now on chronic medication every single day, and antidepressants are consistently on the rise all over the world. So clearly, whatever we're busy doing on a health and wellness perspective, or at least in a day-to-day life perspective, is not working if people have to be drugged to be healthy and to be happy. This is where I come into that food and nutrients are essential for health. They have a major part to play, but they're not actually our primary food sources. They are secondary food sources. From what I've seen, our primary food sources are far more about emotional and mental health and connectivity. So some of the questions beyond food that I'd ask you to ask yourself is, do you have a vision and a purpose? Are you passionate about life? Are you living a life without limits? Do you wake up excited? Are you inspired daily? Do you do what you do with people you love? Do what you do with love with the people you love? And are you in a state of joy and happiness? And if any of these questions are a no consistently, then what's keeping you stuck? What's stopping you? And from my own experience, 15 years of systematically looking at what in my life is causing me the most emotional pain, the most mental pain, and systematically removing those things, taking them out. People will be around people that pull them down all the time. Why? Why would you put yourself through that? Just get out of the space. People will be in jobs that they hate and they dread getting out of bed. Why put yourself through that? That's insane. You have the power to change that. And you start by starting to visualize what it is you do want. So you can't often just go and quit your job, but you can certainly start thinking and running through your circuitry, what do you really want in life? And if you start considering that on a regular basis, those things start happening. I mean, I'm going to mention Bruce Lipton a little bit later on, and he's clearly shown that this happens. So what is it that actually stops us from soaring free? Programming, simple programming. We are programmed from birth up until this very moment by inputs from our environment, family inputs, news, TV inputs, TV program inputs. They even tell you it's programming. Busy, hectic, stressed, poisoned, undernourished, and underloved from birth. So we have quite a bit of work to do to repair those broken continuums. So where do we start with that? I recently watched an interview that Dr. Bruce Lipton did with on London Real. If anyone has seen any of the London Real movies, highly recommend it. Great stuff and fun for ages. And this is one of the quotes that I love of his. I'll just read it out to you guys. Love and fear are both energies. Well, maybe I can even share my screen and then you guys can read it too. Let's see. No, maybe not. Oh, right, here we go. Yes, let's do this one. There we go. What stops us soaring free? Love and fear are both energies, but one enhances life and the other cancels life. When we are in love, we become more healthy. We glow and have far more energy. For unbeknown to us, our bodies release certain neurochemicals into our bloodstream that enhances the growth and vitality of the system, which is completely opposite when we experience fear, because the chemicals released by the brain in fear shut down the system and you create a wall around you, and thus you become disconnected from something greater. So really, for me, the current epidemic is an epidemic of fear. It seems pretty clear that the mainstream media has a narrative of fear that they're pushing as hard as possible. In this country, in South Africa, it's even more obvious when you consider that more people die of taxi accidents every day than have died from this virus so far. So the fear that's being created is just really causing irrational behavior around the world as far as I can see. I'm going to post a link here to the YouTube clip. It's an excerpt from that interview. I'll post it in the chat screen and then you guys can check it out yourself. There you go. It's just a 10-minute clip where he just talks about fear in relation to the current situation around the planet and some statistics that he's been looking at and working on as a doctor. Some great stuff there. So really, the question I come back to is, how do you know? Everyone has a story. No one knows. The only thing we know is that we know nothing. And that was from Socrates. As far as I'm concerned, integrity is how you live your life in the greatest knowledge you can. So this is where you do the best with what you know by your own experience. And this means consistently testing, experimenting, challenging assumptions, and then learning from those, getting results. And when you get positive results, take action on those over and over again. Whether that's for a mainstream media story or a health discovery in your own life. You know, we have something called the pain body. The pain body is part of our physiological body that holds all our negative experience and stories in our cells. So we need to look at physiologically detoxing those. So that's why I recommend detoxes of any kind, whether it's a juice fast or whether it's a calorie restriction or whether it's even just a water fast. Various types of fasts for various lengths of time. We don't really have the time today to get into them in detail, but I'd certainly recommend looking into that. When you strip toxicity out of your body, you're also stripping out some emotional stuff. It's usually why people have emotions come up while they're on a detox. One of the technologies you can look into and how to change your state of mind from a negative focused to a positive focused is something called Psych, PSYCH-K. Dr. Bruce Lipton is part of this too, really looking at ways to reprogram our subconscious. Because you must remember, your subconscious mind is that part of your mind much bigger than your conscious waking mind, which takes all of the information in your life day to day, and it builds the story of you in relation to the world. Now, if most of your life you've been getting less than positive stories coming in, and the statistic I've heard years ago was that for every positive input a child gets, they also get 1,250 negative inputs. You know, this tends to be a little bit skewed into the negative. So we need to start reinforcing the positive in our own lives, in our own minds. So look into psyche. But fundamentally, it's relentless, consistent action. You are the master of your own mind and your own life. You know what goes in your head better than anyone else. So you can control that through being aware. It starts with awareness. Know thyself is the first step on your path. So for me, looking at positive ways to change the situation, the key is connection, starting to get reconnected to the earth and to nature primarily. I think the earth is our greatest healing resource. Getting outside barefoot and grounded, getting outdoors as far as possible. Obviously right now that's illegal, although going outdoors is not illegal, just going to the park or to the forest is illegal. So at least get outside as much as you can, breathe in the fresh air. The air is definitely fresher right now. This is a great side effect of the coronavirus lockdown. Parts of Asia can now see the Himalayas again after 40 years of smog out. So, there's some amazing things happening with the earth, just being able to breathe with the lack of transportation moving around. That's great. I mean, look, if we can find ways of, bringing that more into our lives where the earth gets to breathe again, I'm all for that. Gardening is a great way of reconnecting with nature, growing your own food, reconnecting to that cycle of feeding yourself. Another option you can look at is intentional relationship with technology. I put this one in here because technology often is the thing that takes us away from nature. Being stuck behind a computer or a device, and I understand that our lives today are very much set up that that's necessary. I mean, I spend 2-3 hours a day staring at my computer. I've got a lot of stuff that I'm doing in my life that requires digital interface, but make sure that whilst on your device, you have regular breaks. Staring at a screen for 30 minutes, you can manage just about. If you stare at it for 3 hours straight, you're going to get very, very tired. It's going to damage your eyes long term. So make sure you step away from the device, breathe some fresh air, go outside. Certainly being in an environment with other people around you where they're all just staring at screens, to me, that's insane. I mean, that's clearly a description of how damaged our continuum really is. So that leads me on to then connecting with people and community. I read many years ago a book called The Blue Zones, which is based on a study on longevity cultures around the world. And they looked at the 10 top things that made these people live to more than 100 years old. And what they found was fascinating. The number one thing that they found was connection. I'll read the quote here. Connection to people and to community was the number one indicator of longevity. So obviously, again, right now, that's tricky beyond using technology. But once lockdown lifts, I think a lot of people are realizing in the lockdown that relationships are the most important thing. And that has been shown in science too. So just focus on that. Connecting to your purpose and to your desires. Like I have a monthly process that I do in alignment with moon phases where I connect to my intentions for that month, based on my purpose and the desires that are coming up for me at that time. I highly recommend that. Staying monthly in tune with what it is that you're intending and manifesting in your world is a powerful way to shift your life into a more positive direction. Another very powerful way is paying attention to the words that you use and the stories that you tell, not only verbally, but also internally in your own mind. Just watch that train of thought. What you're saying to yourself about yourself is what you believe to be true about yourself. I mean, this is the greatest trick in the world about feeling good about yourself. You get to decide by telling yourself. Your subconscious mind is a massive, powerful thing, but it's pretty stupid. By pretty stupid, what I mean is it doesn't discern, it just absorbs. So if it's absorbed, you telling yourself you're a problem for your whole life, that's your belief system, and that's what you're going to receive in your world. If you change that story to I'm amazing and I have great ideas and I love life, that's what's going to be outpictured in your reality. So you do have the power to change that. And then outward from that, sometimes it's hard for people to just connect to their own thinking and change it. But if you're actually verbalizing it, well, then you've got a second there to catch it. Not only for yourself, but also for other people. How do you speak about other people, whether they're in your space or out of your space? How do you hold yourself and other people? Do you hold them in the highest regard at all times? Or are you always aiming, even in difficult situations, to see the best in people? For me, this is a profound way of maintaining a high vibration. This, for me, is what self-actualizing and self-activation is. When you activate the aspect of yourself that is always honoring of people and always considering the best in people. So definitely look at that. Some of the tools I've found over the years that have been really effective for me: affirmations and intentions. I know sometimes it's like, oh, more affirmations, I have to say the same thing over again. They do work because they're programming your subconscious mind. Getting the affirmation right is often a little bit tricky. Keeping it in a positive, current, present tense state so that you're saying it as it's happening now rather than something that you want in the future. If you futurize everything, it's always in the future. It's never in the now. You've got to make it in the now. Fake it till you make it. And that totally applies to your own internal dialogue. Meditation, contemplation practices, prayer practices, anytime that you can get your mind quiet. Breathing practices are amazing for this. I do a breath meditation with my office team every morning. We check in for 15 minutes and I run them through a very simple meditation where we just get our hearts and our minds and our bodies in alignment. And breathing is the key to that. It allows you to drop deeply into yourself and to be present and to be calm. If you find yourself in an emotional, difficult space, breath is your barometer. It is how you move the needle the fastest. Notice how you're breathing the next time you're stressed. It's going to be shallow, fight or flight type breathing. When you drop into a deep abdominal breathing, it brings calmness to the whole, so you feel it. It's like a tingly vibe. Just remember, breath is the key there. Gratitude processes of any kind are profound. Bruce Lipton says that fear and love can't exist at the same time in your mind. Well, gratitude and fear can't exist together at the same time either. If you hold a space of gratitude, you dispel fear. I, for many, many years, almost a decade, did a daily morning gratitude process. As soon as I woke up in the morning, I would write down the 10 top things I'm grateful for in the day. And it just sets the day on what it is that you want more of in your life. I mean, I think I watched The Secret all those years ago 20, 30 times. That's one of the central tenets in that whole movie, is that what you're grateful for, you polarize more of that into your environment, into your life. For those of you who know Tony Robbins, one of my mentors too, he talks about the 90-second rule. It was an interview that he did with Tim Ferriss a few years ago. You can check that one out. Very, very highly recommended. He basically says that him and his wife have an agreement. They are in relationship to uphold each other in the highest positive expression they can. Isn't that what all relationships really should be, right? So they give each other permission to support each other if one of them drops below the line. And everyone drops below the line at some point. Like, you can't be in a high positive state all the time. Maybe you can. Maybe that's called enlightenment. Most people that I've met, actually all people I've met at some point, you're just going to get a bit overwhelmed. So it's amazing that if in that situation you have someone that you love who lives in your space, who can notice, and they do notice, everyone notices. They just usually don't say anything. If they notice and you've given them permission to say, hey, I noticed that you seem to be a little bit bothered. Is there anything I can help you with? Or instead of asking them what they want, you can say, would you like a cup of tea? Or would you like a foot massage or a neck massage? Or would you like me to make you a snack? Like something helpful and positive. Do you know how far a cup of tea goes in making someone feel better if they're not feeling great? Do you know how far it goes having someone notice that you're in a space that you need some support? That for me is one of the most profound experience in a long-term relationship that I found. 90-second rule. And then they recognize in that process, oh, you've noticed I'm in a space. So I've noticed I'm in a space. So now it's up to me to get myself out of that space, because you can't expect someone else to do the work for you. That never works. That's why relationships fall apart. When people expect someone else is going to solve their own internal problems, never going to happen. You are the only one that can solve your mind and your own problems, but it helps having someone just go, hey, I noticed, and here's something to say, I love you. You then have to do your own work and shift your state best you can. I always recommend high vibrational foods, raw foods, whole foods, organic foods. These things are a profound way to shift your state too. And then really just asking the fundamental question, if you have children, this makes it easy. What kind of world would you like your children to inherit? And we are the ones that are creating that world in our day-to-day lives. So we have power there. So these are simple things that you can try. What I have found in my own life is even with these things, I sometimes drop the ball and I get into a negative mind space. So what I have found works for me in that situation is mind-altering drugs. So some people will be like, what is he talking about? What I'm talking about here are traditional herbal medicines that have been used for thousands of years that allow one to stay in a more positive state and mindset. And I'm going to just mention 3 of them this morning, and I'll keep them legal. A lot of the stuff comes from traditional Chinese medicine or Ayurvedic herbalism, some of them even African herbalism. I'll show you the slide for this too. Oh, let's find the slide. Finding slides, here we go. Bing. Can you guys see that? So one of my favorite plant foods or herbs that I've used for many years is scaletium. Korean San people used it as a mood enhancer. Although I expect their moods were pretty much good all the time, they probably just used it for focus and concentration. It has, though, been found in many scientific studies to elevate the mood, decrease anxiety, decrease stress and tension, and it's a very powerful antidepressant. So this is available to us in South Africa. It's one of our local indigenous herbs. There are many different brands out there. Find one that works for you. What I would say is that if you try it and you don't notice anything, it's probably because it doesn't have any active compounds in it. It's one of the challenges with scaletium today. Finding one that actually is powerfully effective. Verve Dynamics was a brand that I used many years ago. Scaletium Source is, I think, another one of their brands. So check them out. They actually do tests to make sure that scaletium contains the actives. The reason why often they don't is that if you are farming scaletium, quite often they don't have the medicine in them. If it's wild scaletium, it almost always has the medicine in it. So that's a very interesting thing, that this plant seems to, as many plants do, change structure and shape if they're farmed. Okay, so let's take this away and then see what else we have. The second herb that I'd highly recommend is cannabis, and maybe not in the way that you guys expect. Cannabis has been shown to dissolve cancer cells, allow pain relief, prevents Alzheimer's disease, balance blood sugars. You know, there's a lot of amazing research finally coming out again now that we're allowed to do research on this. But the research on CBD specifically is amazing. So I'm not necessarily talking about the psychoactive properties of cannabis as a state change. Obviously, that's what it does. I'm talking about the non-psychoactive effects that are also powerful at changing your state. So CBD has been thoroughly looked at, and it's neuroprotective. It helps with anxiety disorders. It helps with epilepsy, MS, spinal cord injuries, cancer. I mean, many, many different things, but primarily anxiety is where it's found to be the most effective. So using it in these times is an amazing way of getting the benefit of it. And there are many different brands of CBD available now that you can get hold of. I mean, my brand is selling a chocolate bar, CBD chocolate bar, which is my favorite way of eating it. The other ways you can consume CBD is in the raw plants. If you have a look at this slide here, ooh, where did I go? This one, share. This is the difference between neutral versus acidic forms of cannabis. So CBDA or THCA are the raw, fresh, unheated versions of the same cannabinoids that you would get in things like the chocolate bar that we sell, which is the CBD that has been decarboxylated. So in the raw state, they are non-psychoactive, even THC. They're mostly immunomodulating because of the anti-inflammatory effect. So this is a powerful immune system modulator. And they're extremely, extremely low in toxicity. Basically, at that toxicity level, you couldn't eat enough to cause any damage to yourself. Once you get into eating neutral cannabinoids, this is where they've been decarboxylated and the acid has been removed from the CBD or THC molecule. You now have a wider range of medicinal properties. Some of them are psychoactive, but only a few, and also very low toxicity. So this is why I highly recommend growing your own plants. In South Africa, we are lucky enough to be able to do that now. So you can juice the green leaves from cannabis plants, any types of cannabis, sativa, indica, anything you find, and it's going to give you those antioxidant properties that are going to help your immune system. So I definitely recommend a daily use of raw, fresh cannabis. I make myself a pesto from the leaves using the pesto recipe in our Rawlicious book. Instead of using basil, I just use tons of cannabis leaves, and it makes the most delicious pesto. And I consume that every day as a potent source of antioxidants and immune system chemicals. And then the last herb I wanted to talk about is a herb that very few people know about, surprisingly. I'll show you what that looks like. It's called kratom. Kratom is a tropical tree, similar to coffee, although it's not caffeine based. In Southeast Asia, they've been using it for hundreds, if not thousands of years to combat fatigue, in the same way that people in South America use coca on a day-to-day basis. So this is a plant that interacts with your opiate receptors. It's an opiate agonist, but it's very, very mild. Often people think that this is some kind of natural form of heroin, and it might work on the same receptors, but it is not an opiate by definition. It's not the same chemical structure as an opiate. It just happens to affect the opiate system. So the opiate system is your body's feel-good system. It's that, I feel okay, I feel relaxed kind of feeling. So kratom is used extensively to get people off opiate addiction. They use it to drop heroin. So I'd highly recommend that if you find yourself not really coping with stress and anxiety, that you try kratom. South Africa, it hasn't been widely available, though we just made it available through 2 products that I'll mention a bit later on. But there was there's very little research that's been done on kratom, but there was a survey of over 9,000 people, 8,000 people done in the States a few years ago. And they found that 79% of people reported an increased energy level, 75% reported less anxiety, and 76% had less depressed mood. So those numbers are extremely high, even just for a study of this kind. So I definitely would look at utilizing kratom in your arsenal of state-shifting herbs. It also has a profound effect on chronic pain. The opioid crisis around the world right now is one of those massive health issues. And kratom has been found to work better and far safer than opioids in not only releasing pain, but also relieving stress. That same study found that 68% of positive results for self-treating pain and 66% for emotional and mental conditions. So definitely a plant that I would look into. Just to give you guys an idea, I mean, in our world today, when people want to change state, this is really a slide that lets you know, like when you talk about what's legal and what's not legal. I got this out of a book a couple of years ago called Taking Hot Air Out of Drugs by Professor Nutt from the UK. He basically found this is a danger scale. So the higher the scale, the more dangerous the drug. And they found that the most dangerous drug in society today by a long shot was alcohol. The red is harm to others and the blue is harm to self. And then it's heroin and cocaine and methamphetamine and tobacco and amphetamine. And then right at the bottom there, number 6 out of 100, you got mushrooms and ecstasy and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not going to belabor this point. I'm just, the reason I'm putting this up there is just to show that if you're looking to alcohol as a way of soothing yourself or self-medicating out of your stress, it's not going to make it any better. It's going to make it a lot worse. Hey, strangely, the lockdown has locked out alcohol and cigarettes too. What a great health opportunity for everyone to, kick the habits and to start feeling better using other more effective things like kratom. So those are the top herbs that I want to mention. The products I was talking about, just as a little pun, because I love these things. I make these things because I love to use them, and I share them with friends and they love them. I don't know if any of you guys have used our Euphoria or Release products. I've basically combined kratom with a whole bunch of medicinal herbs from the Chinese medicinal system or Ayurveda, and intentionally Euphoria is created to improve your mood, give you feelings of upliftedness and promote lightness. And then Release is more as a pain release, emotional pain or physical pain or mental pain, and to buffer stress. So definitely look at those two if you're looking for support. That's pretty much my rant for this morning. We've hit our 30-minute point. I'm gonna go into questions in just a minute. You guys can either chat by raising your hand. There's a button for that somewhere, or you can just chat by typing into the chat screen if you guys have any questions. And we are going to be sending you out some more challenges this week. And I will be uploading this video onto YouTube if you've got any friends or family who'd like to look at it and you think they'd get benefit from it. But let's go with